Again, this is Courtney Britton with the Texas Wildlife Association. Today's Wildlife for Lunch webinar is Wild Pigs, the Good, the Bad, or the Ugly. It's presented by Dr. Billy Higginbotham, Extension Wildlife and Fisheries Specialist from the Texas AgriLife Extension Service. Dr. Higginbotham, I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to you now.
Well, thank you so much, Courtney, and thank you and TWA for hosting this event for us this afternoon. I'm assuming you can let me know when we reach some of the audience participation points that they can give us feedback. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Good enough.
And I've gone ahead and put on the slides when there's a vote, it says to vote, so it's in there.
Very good. Let's get started then. We're going to cover a lot of information today, folks, and part of it I'm going to go through fairly rapidly because I think a lot of it you may be familiar with. But I wanted to start out and just kind of get our vocabulary on the same page, if you will. And there's a lot of different names thrown out there about what we should be calling these critters. And I've kind of settled on wild pigs, and that's really from information from one of my mentors, Dr. John Mayer, who is kind of a guru in the wild pig world. And wild pig seems to be a good name for us to use as we describe this particular animal. We start with Eurasian wild boar. That's an old world species native to Europe and Southeast Asia. And all of our domestic swine that we have today can be traced back to the Eurasian wild boar. They were domesticated some 8,000 to 10,000 years ago and brought over to the New World and as a food source, and certainly some of those domesticated pigs became feral from a few to many generations in the wild, hence the name feral hogs. But at the same time, beginning in the late 1890s, the Eurasian wild boar, the parent stock, was brought over from the old world for hunting purposes. And so there may be a few spots in the continental U.S. where the Eurasian wild boar genetics is still fairly pure, but certainly we have a lot of wild pigs out there that are a result of the cross or hybridization between feral hogs and Eurasian wild boars. And so wild pigs is probably the most accurate or descriptive name that we can use. So fact or fiction, wild pigs are an ag or rural issue only. Well, let's take a look, and I'll go through these fairly quickly, but obviously the damage is severe to agriculture in the state of Texas and certainly anywhere we find wild pig populations. Pasture damage, as you'll see later, is monumental in terms of the damage caused. We estimate well over $50 million of damage to the Texas agricultural economy by wild pigs every year, and this damage to pastures and hay meadows is certainly one of the major types that we encounter. But it's certainly not limited to that. Row crops, and you name the crop, milo, peanuts, corn, the list goes on, tremendous amounts of damage. Even our orchards, commercial orchards, are not immune. Peach orchards, pecan orchards. Here you see breaking the scapling limbs and even damage to some of the irrigation lines that are used in many orchards today. But it's not just limited to agriculture. As our populations have increased and their range has expanded, we see a tremendous amount of vehicle damage as a result of wild pig vehicle collisions. It's estimated that the average cost of one of these collisions is around $1,300 to $1,400 per event. Unfortunately, as well, we've also had a few fatalities in the state of Texas linked to wild pig vehicle collisions. Strictly not limited to agriculture only. As we see populations expand into green spaces and into areas that were former wildlife habitat, as we have suburban sprawl, and even in urban areas, we're seeing more and more of this type damage around homes to lawns. You can see here the damage to a suburban lawn with a pig trap set up in the front yard, probably too little too late in this instance. On our farms and ranches, you can see this damage that was occurred over 2 consecutive nights. No word whether the pigs actually got out there and played a set of tennis behind the cabin, but tremendous damage nonetheless. And then as we get into athletic fields and golf courses, we see damage that can become very, very extensive. And they tell me that these golf greens, some of them cost between $30,000 and $50,000 to put in, so the damage can be severe and costly. And even when these pigs get on the areas where our kids and grandkids play, it gets to be a serious issue. Wild pigs have even gone to church, but no real clue as to whether they're there to repent for their sins or not. So what is all of this rooting activity doing? What is what is that activity or behavior meant to accomplish? Well, they're searching for food. They're eating roots, they're eating tubers, they're eating grubs, they're eating worms. Wild pigs will literally eat anything that has a calorie. Now, to show you just a sample of some of the damage characteristics that we've experienced in the state of Texas, this is a result of some of our landowner surveys for the past several years. And you can see that the tallest bar there is pastures and meadows. 75% of the landowners surveyed reported that. But as you look over to the right side of your screen, what really concerns me is we have 39% of landowners reporting that they're having to spend their valuable time trying to control wild pigs or correct the damage they cause versus spending it on other activities on the farm and ranch. We also see that 23% believe their land value has declined because of the presence of wild pigs. Same thing on recreational lease values, 24% of landowners. And that's really turning a corner for us, that we're realizing that wild pigs are indeed a liability, where 25, 30 years ago, many landowners viewed wild pigs as an asset. It gave them something, or their hunters they leased to, something to hunt after deer season closed. But I believe we're turning the corner on that. We did conduct a survey of Texas landowners, and we asked them to characterize the way they removed wild pigs in the calendar year of 2010. The survey was conducted last spring. We got surveys back from about half of the 254 Texas counties. 81% of the landowners that responded said they removed pigs. The acreage involved in the survey was almost 2 million acres. And you can see the various methods that landowners use to remove some 36,600 pigs. If you look at all trapping, that combined, it represented 57% of all pigs removed by trapping, either trap and destroy, trap and use, or trap and sell. And then all shooting, whether it be hunting, owner-employee shooting, or recreational hunting, or including aerial shooting, represented 35%. So between trapping and shooting represents about 92% of the pigs that removed in our survey respondents in calendar year 2010. Now, there is an ecological impact by these wild pigs, and it can be either predation directly upon many native wildlife species or competition with our native wildlife species. This is some work that Greg Yera did in East Texas back in the 70s, but it shows that white-tailed deer and wild pigs can have a considerable diet overlap in that fall period of the year. If you're sitting on your deer stand waiting for it to get daylight on opening morning and you see that scene, what are the chances of you seeing a white-tailed deer? So they're really disruptive to deer hunting activities, and I've said many, many times, if you are a landowner or you're managing a hunting lease where you're trying to manage primarily for native species such as white-tailed deer, your tolerance for wild pigs needs to be very, very low. Behaviorally, white-tailed deer do not want to be associated with wild pigs. Perhaps you sat in a deer stand and you overlooking a food plot or perhaps a feeder, and you had deer feeding out in front of you, and then all of a sudden those deer spook and leave, and you wonder what happened. Well, the answer may just be around the corner as the wild pigs show up to share that food source. So behaviorally, deer don't want anything to do with wild pigs, and the two species share some 83 million acres in the state of Texas alone. So it's something we've got to be aware of if we're going to try to manage intensively for deer. So here's some things we do know. We know that in Texas and across the South, where we have the highest populations, that they do share millions of acres. And we haven't really talked about the consumption of deer supplement, which is legal to supplement our white-tailed deer in the state of Texas. But shelled corn alone, we feed some 300 million pounds a year. We intend it to be for native species like white-tailed deer, perhaps turkey, and to a lesser degree bobwhite quail. But how much of that's going to non-target species like raccoons or wild pigs? It's very possible we're making our pig problem worse by providing them or giving them access to that supplement. Those sows undergo flushing when they're on an increased nutritional plane. They produce more eggs, they have larger litters, and more of those pigs can survive. So we'll address this later in the webinar, but we may be making our pig problem worse where we have pigs and deer sharing the same habitat and we are supplementing those deer. And as you saw from the video, deer just do not want to be around pigs. Fact or fiction, you can detect the presence of pigs before damage begins. Well, hopefully that's the case, that you can catch the presence of pigs before they actually start their destructive behavior. Look for the tracks that are more rounded. Look for wallas in wet areas, which were hard to find in 2011 because water was limited. Look for the mud and the rubbing on creosote poles, telephone poles, fence posts. Here you can see a pine tree that's been rubbed and presumably trying to rub off external parasites. But also look for these trails that are almost like interstate highways that wild pigs would make. They are creatures of habit, and undisturbed they will leave sign along these trails and follow some of the same routes on a regular basis. But lots of barbed wire fences in the state of Texas. Look for that coarse hair on that bottom strand and look for mud on that bottom strand. There's nothing else that's going to leave that sign other than wild pigs. Typically they're going to be tied close to heavy understory vegetation where they're not disturbed or bumped, and that's going to be close to water if you've got it, and that's where they're going to lay up typically during daylight hours. Fact or fiction, wild pigs can be found in all of the lower 48 states. Well, let's take a look at that. In 1982, there were 17 states, 28 states in 2004, and our latest estimate is 46 states, and that represents a whopping increase just in that time period alone. But we're not alone. 4 Canadian provinces also share wild pigs. This is a map that my colleague Roel Lopez generated from Institute of Renewable Natural Resources, and based on some of his data, we project that about 79% of the land area in Texas is inhabitable by wild pigs. And then we believe the actual map of distribution is not too different from this map. So I think they align very closely. So the question comes up, how did we get so many so fast? What happened? Because in many areas in the late 70s through the mid-1980s, you just didn't see or hear much about wild pig populations throughout a good bit of the state. Well, I think a perfect storm occurred beginning in the mid-1980s. And keep in mind that wild pigs are general omnivores. Now, probably 80% of their diet is vegetation, but they can survive on just about anything. They can be a predator, they can be a scavenger, they can feed on vegetation, as I mentioned, and so they've got a really wide diet that they can benefit from. They're smart, and in my opinion, they're much smarter than a white-tailed deer. And this is probably what hurt us the most, is in an attempt to provide wild pigs as a supplemental hunting species. Before we knew the impact that they would have on the landscape, there were a lot of pigs trailered and moved and released across the state of Texas. Never was legal, but people did it, and you can undo a lot of control efforts in a short period of time with one trailer load of pigs. So that hurt us. And then, as I mentioned, the 300 million pounds of shelled corn alone that's being fed to wildlife in the state of Texas, that does not include the supplement such as protein pellets. And you put all these together, I think it led to the population explosion, because we are talking about a species that of large mammals worldwide, it has the highest reproductive rate of any of them. Now, they're not born pregnant, but it does have an extremely high reproductive rate. But let's talk about busting some myths for just a minute, because you hear all kinds of things in the coffee shop or reading the newspaper that are just not true. I can tell you that if these populations did double every 4 months, as you often hear, you would have to fight your way to the mailbox every day. So that's not correct. Left unchecked, populations can double about every 5 years here in the state of Texas, and believe me, we're trying to do everything we possibly can not to leave them unchecked. Sows have 3 litters per year and 12 pigs per litter. Again, that's not true. Based on the literature, they average perhaps 1.5 litters with about 5 to 6 pigs per litter. And there are 4 million wild pigs in Texas. Well, based again on some of the work by Dr. Lopez, we've been able to cobble several studies together and come up with an estimate of about 2.6 million pigs in the state. Now, that's still way too many, but that's where we stand at this point. And Courtney, this may be a good spot to stop and see if we've got a question or two we can answer before moving on.
Okay, great. We do have a couple of questions. One question is, has the extensive drought in Texas had a noticeable impact on feral hog populations in our state?
I have been absolutely amazed as we have continued to trap all summer and fall, as everyone knows, how dry it was and how sleek and perhaps not fat, but I did not see many pigs in poor condition. And I've just been totally amazed that the drought did not seem to take its toll on those pigs any worse than it did. And I attribute that to their ability to vary their diet to such a great degree.
Excellent. Our next question is, do you have a list of any feedlots or anywhere that will purchase live pigs if you can trap them?
Yes. If you'll go to the Texas Animal Health Commission website or contact one of their regional or district offices, they maintain a list of the current buying stations. In fact, the last one that I believe was posted was current as of December 29th, and I just downloaded a copy yesterday. So that's the best place to go. The contact information is listed on there by county, so you can determine which of those buying stations may be closest to you.
Excellent. And it looks like one of our other participants has provided a link there in the chat window to that website. Then our next question is, what states do not yet have pigs?
Well, it's a very short list. I think Connecticut may still be a holdout, and there may be another state adjacent to Connecticut, but it's very possible that those states that claim to not have pigs may be in denial. There have been remains of wild pigs found in southern Alaska, and Hawaii has had pigs longer than any state in the continental U.S. The Polynesians brought them in somewhere between about 400 and 800 AD, or about 12 to 1500 years ago. So very few states, if any, but I believe Connecticut may be one of the few holdouts.
Excellent. And our last question so far is there any good they do?
Well, if you're looking for a silver lining, they do provide income to landowners that have availed themselves to allow hunting for a fee for that species. The other thing is they are being used as a human food source, and many landowners are literally trying to make a silk purse out of a sow's ear by selling those pigs that they capture live to one of those buying stations, and at least being reimbursed for some of the money that they've invested in control efforts.
Great, and that is all of our questions so far. If we want to continue.
Okay. Fact or fiction? Shooting, trapping, snaring, and catch dogs are the only legal control options for wild pigs. And this is a spot where Brittany's provided a true-false opportunity to respond to that question.
Great. So if y'all just want to go ahead and over there under the participants window on your right-hand side in that panel, let us know your vote. Give us your feedback, either yes or no, true or false. And we'll get some polls posted here in just a minute. Let's see. Our survey says, let's see, most folks believe, oh, it seems to be catching up. But right now, currently, false is in the lead by a slim margin. Most folks believe this to be false, and a handful of folks believe this to be true.
Well, that's interesting. Shall we move forward and give the answer?
Please move forward when ready.
If anybody was thinking there is a toxicant or a poison that could be legally used to control wild pigs, the answer is no. Again, there's research going on. I'll talk about that towards the end of the webinar. But right now, shooting, trapping, snaring, and the use of dogs. Now, in Texas, shooting can be done both terrestrially from the ground and aerially by helicopter, for example. Those are legal means. But it's a fairly short list of the methods we have available. So let's talk about these control options in more detail as to what the landowner can do, because that's really what landowners are interested in doing. Now, my daughter thinks she's the champion wild pig hunter of all time, but the truth of the matter is you will not control a wild pig population through recreational hunting. The studies have shown that we need to be removing between 50 and 70% of a pig population annually just to hold it stable. The truth of the matter is that the studies that have been conducted on recreational hunting vary from 8% to 50% of the population being removed through recreational hunting, with an average around 20%. So there's no way that just recreational hunting alone will keep a pig population in check. Now, with that said, there are some techniques that might be better than others. And so we need to separate, when we talk about the shooting aspect of wild pigs, the difference between recreational hunting and shooting in order to abate damage, and those are two very much different things. I often tell people that you can grow old sitting on a deer stand waiting on a wild pig. But if you do tactical shooting, and that may include night vision, as you see here, it could include noise suppression devices, but typically night vision equipment, especially since many pig populations are nocturnal. But if you shoot smarter, not harder, we do believe that shooting can be a very effective means at reducing damage. Now, I want to make sure our audience understands, Courtney, that we are not going to eradicate wild pigs with the current technology we have available. Texas has had wild pigs for 450 years. And what we are attempting to do with our control methods is significantly reduce the damage, but eradication is not in our vocabulary at this point in time. And our studies have shown we are capable of significantly reducing the ag damage they cause through control efforts. But if you're wanting to shoot smarter, not harder, I would very much encourage you to employ one of these little remote sensing cameras or game cameras. When you see the sign, when you see the damage, put bait out, hang a camera, pattern those pigs, because the digital pictures from these cameras will record the date and time. Once you have those pigs patterned, then you minimize the amount of time you're spending afield. You come in from downwind, or you have a blind set up downwind, and you can ease up there and come up to the setup. Perhaps you might want to use some of these little solar panel lights that you can buy for $20 to where they're setting facing away from you towards the bait. And even on the darkest or no moon night, they'll cast enough light that you can pick up the pigs in a rifle scope or with you're using a shotgun without spooking the pigs with that little dim light. So it's very much a way to maximize efficiency. And here you can see our setup. We got here a little late. The pigs arrived before we did, but we were still able to dispatch them. So bait areas around, hang cameras, get those pigs patterned. You don't want to sit out there all night in the summer swatting mosquitoes or shivering in the winter. So pattern those pigs and then really concentrate the effort when you know those pigs are responding to those various bait sites. One of the best methods for control where you can fly is aerial control. Wildlife Services, part of AgriLife Extension, removes about 25,000 wild pigs from the state every year, and about half of those pigs are removed by aerial shooting. Now, I will tell you that this technique is very, very effective in the hands of trained personnel. And the Wildlife Services folks are trained. It's very effective if you're using trained personnel, and where they can fly, which is basically as you move west across the state and south across the state, they use it, and they use it very effectively to control or reduce wild pig populations. Snares are another effective tool. They're either made from 1/8 inch or 3/16 inch cable. You can make them yourself, or you can buy them. You can set a lot of them. They're inexpensive. In fact, one of the publications that Courtney's going to have posted is going to show you how you can build your own snares. But you have to be careful where you set snares. It needs to be on those trails or on those runs that only wild pigs are using. So you need to go back and look at your sign and make sure deer or your neighbor's collie is not also using that run, because you'll catch them as well. But snares can be an effective way to go, but it's a one pig at a time proposition. Dogs are also a one pig at a time proposition, but they can be effective at catching some of those pigs out there. This is a demonstration that I wanted you to see of trapping. I believe that trapping is the first line of defense for the landowner to control wild pigs. And this is a remote camera. There's no folks around. The white line you see running horizontally on your screen is an electric wire just to keep the cattle off. But I want you to see how they react, and this video is courtesy of my friends at the Noble Foundation in Oklahoma. But notice how they go high, they go low. It takes a substantial trap to hold wild pigs. Notice that these panels are 4-inch by 4-inch mesh. They're 60 inches or 5 feet high. That is mandatory. And you need those T-posts reinforcing those panels about every 4 or 5 feet around the perimeter. Here's another trap. This is a teardrop-shaped trap. We often use teardrop-shaped traps in Texas because we often load the pigs out and take them away from the trap location, either to dispose of them or to sell them to a buying station. But here again, you see the 5-foot-high, either 16 or 20-foot-long panels reinforced every 4 to 5 feet with T-posts, and those panels have to be flush to the ground. The teardrop shape will allow you to load those pigs easier. So let's talk about the process of trapping. That's what I'm going to spend the bulk of the time on this afternoon, because again, to me, the landowner's first line of defense is going to be trapping. Now, we conducted this control operation in a commercial peach orchard. The pigs were coming in and breaking the scaffold limbs off so they could get to the peaches. The first thing that you want to do is try to backtrack those pigs to their daytime cover. There's a knee-jerk reaction to set the trap right where the damage is occurring, and that's a mistake. Try to backtrack those pigs. In this case, it's that thicket on the side of a hill about a quarter mile from the peach orchard that you see there in the background, and we're going to try to get as close to that daytime cover as we possibly can, hopefully upwind from it, so the scent of the baits that we're going to use to attract the pigs will carry down to them. So that's an important component. Don't just concentrate where the damage is. Look at the sign and determine where they're laying that in the daytime. First thing you got to do is get these pigs on bait. And so we used what they were looking for as they came into the orchard there that you see in the back right. We used peaches, and we put the peaches out. And once we saw that the pigs were responding to the peaches in this case, we were then able to go to the next step. Let's talk about baits for just a second. There's all kinds of baits out there you can use, and don't get stuck in a rut using only one type of bait. Shelled corn's probably the gold standard, but everything out there, deer, crows, blackbirds, raccoons, everything eats corn. So you may have to go to one of these others, and if you're trying to bait pigs on your property at multiple locations to determine where you want to set up your trap, go ahead and use different baits at each location. They'll respond differently at different times of the year to various baits, and so there's lots of options out there, but don't get stuck in a rut. We often use a strawberry or berry flavored soda or gelatin to mix. Some work that Tyler Campbell did in South Texas indicated that there is a fondness that wild pigs show for that strawberry or berry flavoring, so you can sweeten some of your other baits by using that. In fact, oftentimes we'll cut a little piece of 2-inch PVC, drill holes in it, stuff it full of little cotton balls, and pour that strawberry soda or strawberry gelatin mixture with water in there and suspend it in the trap so it can carry down wind towards that daytime cover. Once you have the pigs on bait, hang a camera. Now, I literally would not try to trap pigs without the use of one of these little devices. They're cheap, they're reliable, they're waterproof, And I guarantee you, with the cost of fuel today and the value of your time, it is worth it to invest the little bit of money that it's going to take to be able to record what's going on. You want to determine, once those pigs are on bait, how many pigs are in that sounder. You notice we haven't set a trap up yet. There is no need to set up a trap of any kind until you can determine the number of pigs that you're dealing with that are causing that damage. In this case, we captured about a dozen pigs on camera. So we knew from that the size trap we needed to erect. Never go in and put a trap up until you have your pigs on bait. So how big does your trap need to be? Will a trap that size do? Or do you need a trap of that size? Well, there was a study done last year and compared the catch rates between box traps and the larger corral traps, the two previous images you just saw. Adult females and juveniles didn't really matter. They would enter both of them about equally. These adult males, the boars, they exhibit a real aversion to these small traps, box traps in particular. And even when females had a choice, they would enter corral traps more often. Really, the juvenile pigs, it didn't matter. But overall, the capture rate was 4 times higher for the larger corral traps than the smaller box traps. So keep that in mind. So once you've got your pigs on bait, erect the trap. I very seldom will put up a trap that has less than about 4 or 5 16-foot long panels in it. And some of the traps I put up may have 8 or 10 panels. What you want to do is kind of match that trap size to the number of pigs. Your goal is to have a trap large enough that the last pig is through the gate before the first pig reaches the trigger mechanism at the back of the trap and actually trips the trigger. So here we're putting the trap up. Notice that we're keeping the panels open where the gate's going to be. Keep it propped open. You want a really wide area. It may take a week or more for the pigs to accept the presence of the trap itself. It may take a week or more after that to venture inside. So you're going to want to bait outside with bait leading inside, and this is after you've already got the pigs responding to that bait side. But you want a really wide opening so they're comfortable going in and out. So how do you know when your pigs are comfortable with that trap's presence?
We're uploading this video. If you give us just a second here.
Okay. It really depends on the pressure that you've had on those pigs as to how long it's going to take them to, one, accept the trap being there. And they're not going to go in the first night, even with a wide opening. You can notice this one's kind of rubbing his hind end against the side of the trap. You can tell he's pretty well accepted that presence. You notice here the gate is tied open in this particular case, but this isn't in our peaches example that we're using, but I just wanted you to see that this is what it might look like on your camera when you're recording to know that those pigs actually are accepting that trap's presence and have no problem going in. Okay, let's talk about gates for just a second because everybody gets hung up on gates. I do not. You can use saloon door gates. You can use rooter gates, swinging door gates. And I will tell you this about those 3 types of gates as Courtney uploads this video. All of those gate designs that you just saw are designed where once they're tripped and closed, more pigs could push in. The fact of the matter is that very seldom happens. Once a gate closes, no more pigs are typically going to push in. And so you're going to catch what you're going to catch on the first trip. So also guillotine gates can be used effectively. Based on that video data that we have. Now these pigs are inside the trap, the gate's wired open. Again, this is a different location than our peaches example, but notice how these pigs react to this gate opening that's about 30 to 36 inches wide. They're inside. Of course, they can't see the camera. It's infrared photography, but look how nervous they are as they exit out of that gate to go back out. We're in the training process here, and they are really reluctant to pass through that narrow opening. While I'm not a big fan of any one particular gate style, I do believe gate width has a bearing on pigs' acceptance. And I think we need to be looking at wider gates, bigger gates, to encourage those pigs to enter these traps. And we actually have a graduate student that's going to be taking a close look at that this spring. So the bigger the gate, the better, in my opinion. But we also have gateless designs. You can see this set of panels that extend out with the fingers exposed like a barb on the hook, and the pigs can push through, and then it's very difficult for them to find that opening to come back through because of the flex in the panels. Back to our peach example. Okay, we're putting peaches further and further back into the trap. You can see we've set our gate now, but the gate's wired open. We still have a large opening there for the pigs to go in and out. We're trying to get them comfortable with this trap and to go into it. And you can see here the pigs are feeding on the outside, but they're not going in. That's a very common occurrence. And so we continue to put our bait further and further back. You can see we've erected a set of T-posts running to the back of the trap. Those will support our tripwire. And now our pigs are getting accustomed to it to the point that they're coming inside. Now we've moved the camera around to the back of the trap to record this. So this is your video evidence that they're beginning to accept the presence of that trap. There's no negative consequences for them to go in, so they accept it and begin to feed. Meanwhile, you're feeding further and further back to the back of the trap. And that's very important to train them. Don't start by putting bait at the back of the trap. Put more bait out front and a little bait inside, and over time, less bait out front, more bait inside, leading back to the back, and you'll see that. Now, I want you to look at these pigs. They are accepting the presence of this trap. It's been wired open. This is a gateless model that we're testing, but one thing I'm seeing with these gateless models where they have to push through is we're able to get the smaller pigs, say less than 100 pounds, to go in and out, but we're having a lot of trouble getting the mature boars and sows to go through, even when it's wired open. So I really think some of these gateless designs may work fine on smaller pigs, but if you've got a camera set there so you can capture not only what's going in, but what's hanging around on the outside of the trap but not going in, it can speak volumes to pig acceptance to that trap. These are all about 100-pound pigs. They're all siblings, and over the course of about a 10-day period, they accepted going into the trap. What you don't see is this group of mature pigs that are off to the outside that will not go in there under any circumstances. So it's kind of interesting to be able to monitor that, and you can certainly do that. It doesn't take a video mode on a camera. You can do it with your stills, but it will certainly tell you a lot about what's going on inside and outside. Now, when you get these sows at this point, and you notice this was the 3rd of January, that they're just about to pop, you've got a limited time to capture that particular sow, because what happens is they will disappear at farrowing time. And you can see now she's back at the trap about 3 weeks later with her pigs. Those pigs are already eating corn at less than 3 weeks of age. And so you've got a limited window of opportunity to catch those very pregnant sows, because once it's farrowing time, they disappear for 2 to 3 weeks and then bring their litter back to that bait site. Okay, we've now closed our panels down to the gate. We're going to train those pigs to go through that narrower opening. Notice we've bent a panel over the top. Any place you've got a corner in a pig trap, you've got to have a cover. Pigs use corners like you and I use a step ladder. They'll pile up on each other and go out over the top, and you'll have the last pig that was on bottom left standing. So even in this neck, we're going to bend the panel over, because that's kind of a pinch point to where they won't be able to pile up in there. I would never approach with my truck to this trap from the back side, because that would force them to pile up in that neck right there. They're going to move away from you. So there's our teardrop-shaped trap. We've got it closed down to where the pigs have to pass through the gate, and we're getting close to the time when we can actually trap. Now you see the black pig there in the right center of your screen. Once they start laying down, taking naps in your trap, you get to pick the day that you want to catch pigs, and you're virtually guaranteed, if you follow this protocol properly, that you can catch the pigs on the day you want to catch the pigs, and not have to worry about running down, did I catch? You should be able to predict with certainty when you're going to be successful. Once we have them ready to trap, on the afternoon before, we'll run our tripwire down that series of T-post above hog height until we get to the next to the last T-post, and then angle it down, and then the area that you see towards the back of the trap's about 15 inches or 10 inches off the ground, and that's where we're going to pile a lot of our bait to make sure we get a trip. Now, there's all kinds of trip mechanisms. I like to use a tripwire either out of coated clothesline or out of braided, not monofilament, but braided fishing line, or a combination of the two, that you can fill that hole with bait, and then they'll root that stick and trip the trap. And then there's our rod, in this case, that's holding the door open, spring-loaded doors on a saloon door. That's going to lead all the way back to the back of the trap, again, above pig height, and then angle down to that tripwire. And your goal now at this stage, when you're set to catch, is you want those pigs to feed their way back to that trigger. You never want them to rush that trigger. If they feed their way back and you put little piles of bait all the way back there, then it gives time for the last pig to get through the gate before the first pig trips the trigger. If you've got a large number of pigs in that particular sounder, then maximizing that distance from the gate to the trigger area is key. That's how you ensure that you maximize the number of pigs that you catch. So here they come on August 1st at 10:47. They're going through the open gate, and 8 minutes later, the gate's closed. It's all over with. There they are with another camera angle trapped. I want them to be so far back into that trap they can't even hear the gate closed. Now that's kind of an exaggeration, but nonetheless, I want a big enough trap to catch them all. I'm greedy. So if you've done everything properly up to that point, you should be able to predict the day that you're going to catch. And it's very important that you go down and check that trap first thing in the morning. The longer you leave pigs in that trap, the more time they have to figure out how to escape. Now notice this is a video camera set up inside the trap. It's set to catch. I want you to just watch how the pigs react. But notice we've got 2 or 3 pigs standing around on the outside of this trap. The gate trips, the pigs react to that. We've obviously caught some. But what about those pigs that were on the outside? Did we just give them a PhD education that they'll never go back into the trap? Well, I think that was the conventional wisdom for a long, long time. But now I've kind of changed my mind on that to some degree. I still think we've got an aversion by particularly mature pigs to go into the traps, especially through narrow gates. But I've changed my mind a bit as to whether or not we'll ever get those other pigs that were there to go into a trap. And I base that on some of our telemetry data that we've collected since last summer. And I'll show you that as soon as this video finishes. Now, we started this telemetry project where we're actually putting GPS collars on some of these pigs and tracking them to help landowners narrow down the habitat selection these pigs are making so they can narrow down the area they need to be focusing their control efforts on. And here we are on July 12th. Putting this collar on this particular sow, and 4 days later, on July 16th, she was back inside the same trap with her buddies. Since we had this occur, we had a second sow do the same thing. 4 days after having the collar installed on her, back in the same trap. So I don't know if we have that much aversion as we once thought or not. But here's our group of about 12 pigs that we captured in the daytime. All you need to do is go down. That board's the most important piece of equipment you've got. Set it down so you won't have a gap between the trailer and the trap, so they'll go underneath the trailer, and put that in place. Back your trailer up. Get everybody back away from the trailer and the trap, except the person that's going to be working the gate. Open the gate, send everybody else around wide to come in to the wide part of the back of the trap. The pigs will funnel away from you, and they'll load into the trailer. So if you know that you want to trailer the pigs away from the capture site, either for disposal or to sell to a buying station, you have to consider that when you actually construct your trap. Go ahead and put that teardrop shape in place, because that's the most functional design that will allow you to load pigs out. And you can see pigs are already loaded in the trailer, so the camera didn't kick on until several of them had already loaded, but you can see that there's a couple of stragglers. Once you get the first one in, the others are pretty quick to follow. And they'll load up in that trailer. You've got one person working that gate, and then you can shut the gate and, again, move them. Now, what are your options in terms of moving these pigs? Well, most people are carrying them to a buying station. The boars, the males, can actually be sold to hunting preserves that are licensed to be able to stock pigs for hunting purposes. But typically, they're not going to go to any place but a buying station. Certainly don't take them down the road and turn them back out. That's the worst thing that could happen. So there's our peach-flavored hams loaded in the trailer. We're going to carry them to a buying station in this case, and the price paid is based on the size of the pigs. The largest pigs, over 200 to 210 pounds, bring the most money right now. They're bringing about 40 cents a pound, and then it's a sliding scale down to about 50 pounds where they're paying around a nickel a pound. But they've just got to go somewhere. They can't stay on your place because that's where they're causing the damage, and at least you can recoup some of your trapping costs by selling those pigs. Between 2004 and 2009, there were about 460,000 pigs in the state of Texas run through buying stations. Those buying stations then hauled them to one of several processors in the state where they were inspected by a USDA inspector, pre-mortem, commercial slaughtered, and then put back into the human food chain, both in the United States as well as in the Europe-Asia theater. So that is a little bit of a silk purse out of a sow's ear. So some things I want you to keep in mind is you can't trap what you can't bait. Do not go out there and spend a lot of effort putting up a trap until you've got those pigs on bait. It's a waste of time and effort. And again, that camera will determine the size trap you need to build, and it will also tell you where you are in the process of being ready to set that trap to actually trip. So it is very much a process. Fact or fiction? Humans are smarter than wild pigs. Good, Courtney. I'm glad you didn't ask for a poll on that. Let me show you a very quick series of pigs reacting to a bait. You notice this particular pig's pushing against the tripwire and never tripping it. Well, here's a case where we set what I'll call a short trigger. We had caught the main sounder. Our camera data was showing we just had a few solitary boars responding to the trap after the sounders were removed, which is very common. You can have multiple sounders or boars responding on a different time table to the same bait site. The sounders don't like to mix. And so based on a single boar coming, there was no need to entice him to the very back of the trap, so we rigged this short trigger that you see that he only has to enter about 8 or 10 feet into the trap. But watch this series of pictures that was taken over about a 10-minute period. Again, infrared photography, no light there, as he comes in and goes back out of this particular trap without ever tripping that wire. Now, it's total darkness there. And these folks knew what they were doing. They had trapped a lot of pigs, but this got me to thinking, especially after he turned and smiled at the camera, about how smart these animals are and how careful you have to be. Finally, he tripped it, and as you can see, the guy showed up, and his one-way ticket to hog heaven was punched. So this got me to thinking about tripwires, and I have gone to using the plastic-coated clothesline, as I said, but down in the actual trip area, I am using high-strength 60, 70-pound test braided fishing line because it's less detectable, I believe, by these very, very intelligent animals. And I don't like monofilament because it stretches too much, but this high braid fishing line seems to work very well. So to successfully trap, you got to match your trap size to pig numbers. Use that small mesh to retain even the smallest pigs caught. Remember, those piglets you catch tomorrow could be parents, could farrow in 10, 12, 14 months. So you want to retain all pigs caught. So use that small mesh, 5 foot high, cover corners if you've got them. And then go through this pre-baiting ritual. It's very important. If you've ever just thrown a trap out there and threw a little bait out and didn't catch pigs and wondered why, hopefully now you know. You can monitor by camera, and whatever you do, don't give up. So Courtney, just take just a minute and see if we have some questions that I can answer.
Okay, great. We have one question. Will hogs change their home range when hunting or trapping pressure is added?
We're trying to determine that right now. In fact, I was out looking for pigs in our telemetry study this morning. It's amazing to me they can move pretty good distances from daytime cover to feeding areas. One telemetry study that was done where they were trying to move them around with helicopters showed that even though they could move them temporarily, within a very short period of time, typically about 48 hours, they were back into their home core area after that. So even though they can range a good distance between cover and feeding areas, I think they're creatures of habit, and even with disturbance, I think they're going to want to stay pretty close to that area. Now, there's also been cases where people have been able to successfully harass them out of an area, and as long as they can find food and cover, they may move up and down these rivers, creeks, tributaries, use those like highways, and relocate if they're pressured enough.
Okay. Our next question is, isn't the gossypol and whole cottonseed toxic to hogs?
It is. Gossypol can be toxic to monogastrics in sufficient quantities. Pigs don't particularly like to eat cottonseed. They will eat it, but Dale Rollins conducted a study a number of years ago where he mixed some corn with cottonseed to see if they would eat it, and they typically tried to pick the corn out. But again, if anyone is trying to feed a product with the expressed intent of using it to kill wild pigs, that is not a legal practice. Even though whole cottonseed is routinely fed to deer or cattle, if it's being put out there with the expressed intent to try to kill pigs, it's not a legal practice.
Does diesel-treated corn attract hogs?
It can, and I don't recommend using diesel because you're pouring diesel on that bait. And since many of these pigs are destined to go into buying stations and into the human food chain, and we don't really know the impacts of the diesel on that meat, that's not something I recommend. I would rather see someone use a soured bait that would discourage the use of by non-target species than by being out there pouring diesel on the ground.
Okay, and we have a participant that has property that didn't always have hogs, but now they do. What's their best way to move them off and keep them off?
Put up a high fence and make sure that it's flush to the ground. That's the only way that you can totally keep them off your property, is if you build an impenetrable fence that you can maintain. And that's not going to do away with the problem. You're just moving them over to the next property. But an exclusion fence has been used by people to protect high-value crops. That's the only guaranteed way that I know of that if you can put that up and exclude them from the property and maintain it, that you're going to be able to just totally keep them off of property.
Okay. And what are some of the disease precautions people should observe when handling wild pigs in the field?
Anytime you're going to handle wild pigs, wear plastic or latex gloves, wear eyewear, and if you're going to be field dressing and processing those pigs, make sure your saws, knives, whatever, are washed in hot soapy water, and typically you should be good to go. Pork is still pork, whether it's domestic or wild. You still need to cook that meat to an internal temperature of about 165 degrees. But if you'll wear latex gloves or rubber gloves and wear eyewear during the field dressing process, in most cases beyond that, you ought to be fairly safe. And one of our publications, Courtney, that you're making available discusses precautions that hunters should take from a disease standpoint.
Yes, it does. It's actually produced by the CDC. Our next question is there a season for farrowing? Well, there seems to be a peak in the early spring, but you can find sows with litters 365 days out of the year. So there are some peaks that I believe follow some of the high nutrition times of the year, and those sows are in better condition, and they're able to conceive and farrow. There may be a fall peak as well, but in the early spring there seems to be a peak. But don't be surprised to see a pig with her piglets any day of the year. Okay, great. Our next question is, how long did the entire trapping process take from start to finish in the peach orchard log that you showed us? Well, because the son-in-law of the owner went down and shot into the pigs after we had them trained to the trap, that put us behind several weeks to get them back trained to the trap. It added 2 to 3 weeks to the process. In that particular case, those pigs had been harassed
pretty badly. And so it took a little bit longer. In that case, it was about a 2-month period. Part of that was due that was a commercial peach operation, and it was the height of the harvest season, so we couldn't necessarily do everything as quickly as we had hoped. I've seen it take as little as a week to 10 days from start to finish, but the more pressure those pigs have received, I've also seen it take a couple of months. You just have to be diligent and stay with the process.
Okay. What are the fever tick implications concerning feral hogs? Are there any diseases humans should be concerned about?
The main disease that we're concerned about as humans, and I won't say this is the only one, but brucellosis is a major disease that we're concerned about. And there's been some work by Texas Tech here recently that confirmed tularemia, what many people call rabbit fever, in pigs in some counties out in the western part of the state. But the one that day in, day out that we are most concerned about is the swine brucellosis. And again, that's one reason for the wearing of the gloves and eyewear during the field dressing process.
Okay, and here's another one. Do you need a permit to transport wild pigs?
You know, if you're carrying those pigs to a buying station or you're carrying those pigs to a licensed or permitted hunting preserve that has been inspected by Animal Health Commission, you should not need any permit to do that.
Okay. Do you know if Washington State currently has wild pigs?
Yes, I believe Washington State does have wild pigs. Let me follow up just a little bit on the transportation issue. You can only hold these wild pigs on your property for 7 days before you have to do something with them. And so I would encourage folks that plan on holding those pigs for any length of time, go to the Texas Animal Health Commission website. They have updated their regulations in 2008 and put a little bit more teeth into the regulations. So if you're planning on holding them beyond that 7-day period, then go to that website and check. Sows, female sows and gilts have got to go to slaughter. Unless you're going to go through a fairly detailed process to get those pigs to where you can maintain them on your property. But again, I want to repeat, whatever you do, don't take these pigs, move them off site, and release them on another site. That's the worst thing that could happen.
Okay, and our last question for right now, is there any reason to not just build the trap around a deer feeder that they're using already since it keeps the food source fresh?
Absolutely not. I think that's a great plan of attack, particularly if you're an absentee landowner or a hunter that's only out at the property infrequently. I would hang a camera on that deer feeder, then I would put the panels up just as we described, leaving it open, and then I would tie it down to a gate as my camera data supported the pigs' acceptance to that trap, and then just go from there. But I think a deer feeder is a great way to go.
Okay, great. And Dr. Higginbotham, we are at our hour mark. Folks, we're going to continue and finish our presentation, and we encourage everyone who can to stay on with us for as long as possible, and we'll again answer more questions at the end. But if you do need to drop off, you have completed your requirements to obtain CEU credit, so you can close out of this program at any time, and a new window will pop open that has the survey in it, and once you complete that survey and submit it, we'll be able to get you your CEU credit. We will be emailing those certificates, so you can look for that to come in the next couple of days. And again, if you have any questions, you can feel free to email me. I've put up a link here to a website that Dr. Higginbotham refers to later in the presentation. It's the AgriLife Feral Hog site, so feel free to refer to that. Also, there's a link up above to the publications that are now available on the Texas Wildlife Association website, all referred to in this webinar. If you go to texas-wildlife.org and go to the webinars section, you can see all of those publications are there. And I'll go ahead and put my email address in here too, just so that everybody can get it if they need it. So feel free to email me, Courtney Britton, at TWA if you have any issues. And please go ahead and stick around if you can. We're going to go ahead and finish our presentation.
Courtney, we won't be much longer, but we do have a little bit more information that I wanted to cover. But the participants should be armed and dangerous now when it comes to trapping. And so we're going to talk about some other things now. Again, my colleagues at the Noble Foundation, Josh Gaskamp and Ken G, have been looking at the use of drop nets to control wild pig populations in Oklahoma. And they have found that they can be more effective than corral traps. I think the open nature of those drop nets where the pigs can be trained to come again to a bait site, and then that net is triggered to drop, can be very effective, and their catch rates are a little higher using this method than corral traps. So they're working on that research as we speak. Now, your options are somewhat limited at this point. Once that drop net falls, I'm not going to go in there and remove all those pigs from under that net. So you do have a little bit of a limitation as to what your options are, but they're doing some great research on that, and I think it's going to have a lot of applicability in the state of Texas as we move forward. Now back to our comments about the 300 million pounds of shelled corn that deer hunters are putting out every year, presumably for deer, but in fact, is that corn going to deer, or is it going to non-targets like raccoons and pigs? Well, in 2009, Tyler Campbell and some colleagues in the South Texas area helped me with a study. We conducted it at Welder Wildlife Foundation near Sinton. I've always believed that the height of a fence necessary to keep a pig out was much lower than the height of a fence necessary to keep a pig in. And so I wanted to conduct this study to determine, could we successfully exclude pigs from deer feeders? You know, there's lots of deer feeders in the state of Texas, so we wanted to see what the impact was. And so we put up feeders, we hung cameras, we recorded everything that came and fed for a 2-week period in July of 2009, and then we repeated everything in November of that same year. I don't know if the participants realize just how rare this photograph is, but typically deer and pigs don't show up in the same frame together, but obviously this particular buck was not too intimidated by the presence of this pig. But we put up 6 16-foot-long panels in a circular fashion around our feeders after that 2-week feeding period, and we put them up at 3 different heights, 20 inches, 28 inches, and 34 inches, which is the height of a standard swine panel. The 6 16-foot panels had a T-post at each juncture. The meshes were overlapped one mesh width, and then a T-post driven there, and then 8 feet around to the other, towards the other end of the panel, another T-post was driven. So we're looking at 6 panels and 12 T-posts, and it would form a circle exclosure of about 30 feet in diameter. Now, in my mind, that's about the minimum. I would encourage you to use more panels and make a bigger area inside, but I certainly wouldn't go any smaller. So obviously the 20-inch high panels was not high enough. We had breaches occur by large mature pigs. However, we had no breaches in either the July or November portion of the study of either 28 or 34-inch panels. Now, it just so happens that the cost of ripping a 60-inch panel and making one 28 inches high versus just buying the standard stock swine panels available at your farm and ranch store is virtually the same cost. It's going to take about $175 per feeder for those 6 panels and 12 T-posts. But at $20 a hundred corn, which is what we had throughout much of the deer season in Texas this year, it's not going to take too long to pay for that exclosure cost. Not to mention discouraging the pigs from showing up and spooking the deer off, and certainly by them not consuming that product maybe help not make the pig problem any worse than what it is. And I'm kind of on a campaign then to try to get people to fence their feeders on those properties where deer and wild pigs share that habitat. Now, since we conducted this study, our colleague Dave Hewitt down at Texas A&M Kingsville found that if you had fence heights above 33 inches, that might be a deterrent for fawns to be able to enter the feed. So what we have done is we've taken the graduated swine mesh panel, small mesh at the bottom, as you can see, and that top mesh is 6 inches deep. So by cutting it out in an area about 4 feet wide and making 2 or 3 of those notches, if you will, around the perimeter of the exclosure, you've reduced the height to 28 inches, and that should help ease fawn access to those sites. Besides, if you hang a nice sign like this, the fawns know where to go in and out, just like a deer crossing sign on the highway. So we announced the results of this study. Immediately I got an email from a gentleman that said, "No, it doesn't work. Look at this sows with her pigs, and then look at the pigs all in there." And I pointed out to the gentleman that if you've got a mesh size that's large enough like this that you can stick a football through, then you can stick a 10-pound pig through there as well. So you've got to use that smaller mesh to exclude those pigs. There's some great research going on currently in the wild pig arena. I perhaps have painted a bit of a bleak picture this afternoon, but let me just cover a few of the research topics that are going on. One of the most exciting is the research that is going on with toxicants, and most of that research is centering on sodium nitrite. Finding a way to deliver that sodium nitrite in a pig-specific bait is key, and that hadn't happened to this point. So what most of the research is centering on is a feeder that only pigs can access to operate, to access the toxicant. And so that's where a lot of the work is centering. And raccoons appear to be the most prevalent non-target species that could be impacted. The sodium nitrite, even though pigs are sensitive to it, is not just toxic to pigs. It can also be toxic to other mammals as well. These are the baits that are being evaluated, and each of those baits should contain a lethal dose for an average size pig. And this is one of the devices that's being evaluated. It's called the hog hopper. The pig catches that handle you see above its back, raises it with its snout, steps in and feeds, and then steps back and the door slams shut, denying access to other animals. And so in the absence of a pig-specific bait, the delivery system that's pig-specific holds the most promise. Now, the sodium nitrite, if you had bacon or sausage for breakfast this morning, like I did, sodium nitrite is a human meat preservative, a food preservative that's consumed by humans each and every day. The devil is in the dose. If you were going to eat salami, for example, you would have to eat 183 pounds to receive a lethal dose. I can hear some stomachs growling out there since it's during the lunch hour, but I don't think you're going to eat that much. But as I said, pigs do appear to be very susceptible to it. And the nice thing is let's say a pig received a sublethal dose and you trapped and used that pig for home use 2 or 3 days later, there'd be no secondary effect, and also no secondary impact on a scavenger that decided to feed upon a carcass of a pig that died from sodium nitrite. That's important to EPA for the registration process, so that makes a huge difference as we step forward. The other thing about this is as toxicants go, sodium nitrite appears to be fairly humane. As they consume the sodium nitrite, it forms methemoglobin in the blood. The pigs are just not able to pick up oxygen, and they lay down and go to sleep and don't wake up. So it works fairly quickly in about an hour and a half. And so it is fairly humane as toxicants go, and we're hopeful that this will be registered by the year 2015. Is it going to mean the eradication of wild pigs in the state of Texas? I don't think so. But anytime we can put a new tool in the toolbox of landowners, it's a step in the right direction. Here is another delivery system that originated in the United Kingdom. It's called the bore-operated system. Think of an upside-down trash can lid with a heavy metal funnel on a pole that runs up through there. They catch the lip of the funnel with their nose, raise it up, feed. When they step back, it slams shut. So there's lots of good research being done looking at the sodium nitrite as a toxicant, looking at the delivery systems that's being done. A number of state and federal agencies are involved in that research, so we're very optimistic that at some point, sooner rather than later, we will have a toxicant online for landowners to use. We're also doing some trap research, as I mentioned earlier. Don Neindorf came up with this design, a figure-8 trap, where you've got multiple sounders visiting the same bait site, but on different time schedules. You know, it's not uncommon to have one sounder coming at 10 p.m. and a totally different sounder showing up at 2 p.m. As I pointed out, they don't like to mix. And so you have a gate on each end, and you can catch one sounder in one end. The other sounder shows up later. You can catch them in the other end. And then there you see the proof of the pudding, and then all you do is back your trailer up to the end there you see on the right, open the gate in the middle that separates the two cells, force all the pigs into this end, and load them into your trailer. We're also doing some work with some gateless designs, as I mentioned. This is what we call a figure 6 trap that's been modified to where it's got a chute where you can back a trailer up and load the pigs. We're hanging a camera there. This appeared in some of our earlier videos. What we're finding with these gateless traps where pigs have to push through a narrow opening, the younger pigs, say up to about 100 pounds, after a training period, and you can see it's wired open at this point to train them to go in, they're having no problem accepting it, and when it comes time to trap, they'll push in and you'll catch those pigs. But what you wouldn't know if you didn't hang a camera on the outside is that over here to the left, we've got a number of mature sows and boars that are showing up to feed, but they will not venture into that trap. And so that's something that we have to consider, and this is also fueling our desire to look at some of these gate widths. So what you're catching may not be all that's showing up, and the best way to know that is to hang a camera so you see what's going on. I mentioned our telemetry work. It's been going on since late summer. What we're trying to do is look at habitat selection by these wild pigs so we can help landowners narrow down the areas that they can concentrate their control efforts, be it trapping, shooting, snaring, whatever. And so this study is ongoing. It'll go on throughout this spring, and hopefully we'll have some good data on how these pigs are moving and responding to different pressures so we can provide some more insight into how we need to be controlling these pigs with the legal methods that we have at the current time. This is our website. I believe Courtney put it up, feralhogs.tmu.edu. We've got lots and lots of good information on that website, and would encourage our participants to go there and check out some of the information. And this whole Hogs in the Peaches series that we've talked about, this webinar, is also located on that site if you want to go in there and review any of that. Courtney, that's all we've got today. Again, this may be a point if we've had some folks be able to stay with us to answer some questions, and be glad to try to answer those at this point.
Okay, great. We have one question that says, do horses help keep pigs away?
I don't think so. I think it's not uncommon any place you've got livestock being fed, particularly in the winter months or in these drought periods where food becomes a critical resource. I watched pigs yesterday moving in and out of a herd of cattle without any problem, and I don't really like that, but I don't think horses would be much different. I don't think they would be much of a deterrent.
Okay. Are deer corn feeders the largest contributor to the increase in wild pigs?
I can't say that they're the largest contributors, but I believe they're a factor. Simply because these pigs get trained on these feeders very readily, and that's, again, why I'm on a campaign to fence these feeders. Now, let's face it, this is Texas. We are not going to stop supplementing whitetail deer, but we've got some really good research that I showed you the summary of a way that we can continue to supplement deer, but also exclude and discourage those pigs from having access to that supplement.
Okay, another question is about rooting gates. Are these any good?
Yeah, rooting gates are fine, but my point about rooter gates is the same about saloon door gates or swinging door gates. Once they close, even though more pigs could push in if they wanted to, that's not the behavior pattern. Once they're tripped to close, you're done. Whatever you catch the first trip is what you're going to catch. So for that reason, if someone wanted to employ, say, a guillotine gate that we know once it closed, and no more pigs can push in, to me, that's okay. So just plan on catching whatever you're going to catch, regardless of the gate style, on the first trip. And again, the wider the gate, I believe, the better.
Okay, great. In referencing the exclusion fencing, will 34 inches keep cattle out?
No. And one thing we wanted to do as a follow-up is we wanted to see if we ran those T-posts up above that 34-inch panel, how far we would have to go up with hopefully a single strand of barbed wire that would allow the deer to crawl through or jump over and still exclude the cattle. So I think at some height you've got to come up and put at least a single strand of barbed wire up that will allow the deer to go between the barbed wire and the top of the swine panel We didn't get to do that part of the research, unfortunately, but I believe you can make them more cattle-proof by using barbed wire in conjunction with that swine panel.
Okay, and another question about the traps. If you shoot pigs in a trap, will it prevent others from using it?
You know, you get mixed responses on that. I do not like to kill pigs in a trap. Therefore, I design all of my traps where I can trailer them away from the location, because once I put that trap up, my intent is to use it over and over and over again. Now, I may have to splay those ends back out and train another sounder of pigs to get used to it, but I think the larger the trap, the less negative impact there is from shooting pigs in the trap. But again, I'm going to trailer the pigs away for disposal purposes anyway. I think in box traps, you may have to wash the bottom of that trap out or move it over a little bit to get it out of that area. I'm superstitious. I don't like to kill them in a trap, but a lot of people do and have success. But I prefer to either move the trap over if it's a box trap and wash it out, or in a corral trap. I think you will be able to use it again, but if you can move them off-site for disposal away from the trap, I think that's an advantage.
Okay, great. And a very important point here, we have one of our participants asking if it's legal to bait with sodium nitrite.
No, it is not legal to bait with any toxicant at this point in time. I just wanted y'all to get a feel for the great research that a number of agencies are conducting. And so those agencies have permission to use sodium nitrite in these research trials as part of the protocol required by the Environmental Protection Agency to hopefully gain registration. But at this point in time, sodium nitrite or anything else is illegal for a landowner to put out if its expressed intent is to poison wild pigs.
Thank you very much, Dr. Higginbotham. I just put up a link to the TWA website. It's www.texas-wildlife.org. This webinar and all past webinars are archived and recorded and posted on that website. So I hope that folks can tune in anytime they want and can share this information with their friends and neighbors and spread the word so that other people can join us on these webinars. The next event for Wildlife for Lunch is going to be Thursday, March 15th, and we'll have Michael Masser talking about pond management at that time. At this point, I think we've gotten all the questions done. If there are any other questions, feel free to email me or Dr. Higginbotham, and we'll be glad to answer as many questions as we can and address this problem together. Dr. Higginbotham, thank you so much for your time. Thank you, everyone who managed to stay on through the end with us. We really do appreciate it.
Courtney, thank you, and Texas Wildlife Association for hosting today's event.
Excellent. And again, just let us know if you have any questions, and we look forward to having all of you back on the next Wildlife for Lunch webinar.